Hello everyone, this is Sach with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make my Loveland triangle cowl. Now the one that I'm wearing here is made from Lion Brand Mandela yarn, and the one that you see back here is made from Karen Cake's the cupcake yarn. Now you can use any worsted weight number 3 yarn that you want to. This is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath the video. Now this cowl measures approximately 40 inches in length and about 7 inches wide, and it's the perfect weight for fall because it's not too heavy, but it's perfect for when that wind starts blowing, and it adds a nice little touch to any outfit. To make the Loveland triangle cowl, you're going to need about 3 ounces of worsted weight number 3 yarn. Now this one that I have here was stitched in the Karen cupcake yarn, and I just saved the pom-pom for another project. For today's demonstration, we're going to be using Mandela yarn from Lion Brand, and it is also a worsted weight number 3 yarn. Now the name of this yarn that I'm using is called Warlock, and it has some beautiful fall shades in it. And like I said, you're going to need about 3 ounces of any worsted weight number 3 yarn. We're going to be stitching with our H hook today, and this one is a 5.0 millimeter hook. You'll also need a needle for weaving in those ends and a pair of scissors for clipping off those yarns. Go gather your supplies and we'll get started. We're going to begin stitching at the top of the cowl, and we will work back and forth in rows, and then when we finish we'll stitch the back together to form a cowl. So we'll be starting at the top row and working our way down. Now there is a point because this is a triangle cowl, and if you feel like you need to use a stitch marker to mark this point, you certainly can. You could use a safety pin or a paper clip or even another piece of yarn that is different in color, just to let you know where that point is on each row. It's just something that might help you out. All right, I'm going to move this one over so we can get started. The first thing that we need to do is make our slip knot. And then we're going to chain 4 chains. Here's our 4 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to begin by making foundation double crochets. So we're going to yarn over, we're going to put our hook through that 4th chain and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over and only go through the 1st loop. That makes our chain. Now we're going to yarn over and go through the next 2 loops, yarn over and go through the next 2 loops. When you stitch a foundation double crochet, you make the chain and then the double crochet in 1 stitch. Yarn over, we're going to go in that chain that we just made and pull up a loop. We'll yarn over and only go through that 1st loop. There's our next chain that we made. Now we'll yarn over, go through the next 2, yarn over and go through the next 2. So we made the chain and the double crochet. And we need to make 126 foundation double crochets to make the top band of our cowl. All right, now I want you to look at it because you need to know where your chain is on here. Yarn over, go through the chain, pull up a loop, yarn over and only go through the 1 loop. Yarn over and then go through the next 2, yarn over and go through the next 2. Like I said, we're making the chain. Here's my chain. and then we're finishing with a double crochet on each stitch. And you'll see that this makes a nice stretchy edge, and it works great on anything that has a band that you want to be comfortable. All right, so we're going to make 126 foundation double crochets for the top band of our cowl. I'll make a few more. Make sure you understand how to do them. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 126 foundation double crochets, and you do the same. And this is a great place to go ahead and pause the video and then pick it back up after you've got your 126 foundation double crochets made. Here is the top of my cowl. I've done my 126 foundation double crochet stitches. And we're not going to join the ends together like a lot of cowls do. We're going to join it together at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3 and we're going to turn. And the chain 3 counts as our first double crochet of this next row. We're not going to put a double crochet in this first stitch because the chain 3 counted as that double crochet. So we're going to double crochet in the next 2 double crochets, and this is just your basic double crochet. Yarn over, go in the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. Now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip these next 2 double crochet stitches and double crochet in the next 2. And this is going to give us the foundation for the granny square effect that we're doing on this cowl. Now we will have these 3 double crochets at the beginning because our chain 3 does count as that double crochet. And then from here on out, we're going to chain 2, skip 2, and double crochet in the next 2. And we'll do this all the way across our row. So chain 2, skip 2, and 2 double crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 double crochet stitches. Chain 2, skip 2, there's my 2 skipped, and 1 double crochet in the next 2. Now we won't begin to form the point or the V of our cowl until the next row. This is basically forming that foundation, like I said. So we're going to continue across this row, chain 2, skip the next 2, and 2 double crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 double crochets. And we'll do this all the way across our row until we reach the end, and then we'll end with 3 double crochets. So working across, chain 2, skip 2, 1 double crochet, oops, in the next 2. Working all the way across this row. Now this is going to take us a couple of minutes, so again, you may want to pause the video here and pick back up when you get your row completed. Once you have completed your row of the 2 double crochets, chain 2, skip 2 all the way across, you'll have your chain 2 at the end. We'll skip those 2 and then we'll place 1 double crochet in the last 3 double crochet stitches, and this gives us a nice edge to the end of our row. For the next row, we're going to chain 3, and on this row is the row that we're going to be forming our point or triangle point for the cowl. So now I'm turning. The chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. I'm going to double crochet in the next 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. And then I'm going to place 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. So that gives us those 5 double crochets at the beginning. We've got our chain 3 that counts as 1 double crochet in the next 2 double crochets, and then 2 double crochets in the first chain 2 space. We're going to chain 2. There we go. And then we're going to skip over to the next chain 2 space and chain 2. And the chain 2 space is just the hole or space that's left when we chain 2. All right, now we're going to continue to do the chain 2 and 2 double crochets in the next chain 2 space for 13 more times, so that we'll have a total of 14 chain 2 and 2 double crochets across. When we get to that 15th one is where we're going to place the point. So let's work across. So we have a total of 14 2 double crochets, chain 2. Pull out a little more yarn here. So this one doesn't count. We're counting the chain 2 and 2 double crochets. So here's 1, 2, 3. We want to have 14. So keep working across until you reach 14 chain 2 double crochets across. And then I'll show you how to add or make that point for our triangle shawl. So continue across, making the chain 2 double crochets until you have 14 sets across, and then I'll show you how to make the point for our triangle cowl. I stitched my 14 sets of 2 double crochet chain 2s, and then I did my last chain 2 here, and in this next chain 2 space is where we're going to form the point. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 2 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to put 2 more double crochets right in that same chain 2 space, and this is the beginning of our point. I'll go ahead and chain 2, and what you can do is you can put a stitch marker in that point that you can move as you move down the front of the cowl, or you can use, like I said, a paper clip, a safety pin, or just something to help you remember where that is, because once we get going it moves pretty fast, because this is really an easy pattern. So we did the point, and now we're going to work in those next few stitches doing exactly the same thing, 2 double crochets, chain 2, until we reach these last 3 double crochets. So let's keep going with our 2 double crochets. Chain 2, two double crochets, chain 2, all the way across, and you can see just by adding that little point there that we're already getting a little bit of the point of our cowl. The point on this cowl is not like a great big pointy point like on a poncho or on a shawl. It's more of a subtle point, just to maybe tuck in your coat or add a little extra pizzazz to a blouse. Alrighty, so I'm going to keep going across my row, chain 2, 2 double crochets in each of the chain 2 spaces until I reach the end. I've reached my last chain 2 space, and we're not going to chain 2 at the end. We're going to place 1 double crochet in each of those last 3 double crochets. Then we'll chain 3 and we'll turn. All right, so our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet, so we're going to double crochet in the next 2. Then we'll chain 2, and we'll follow the same pattern across. 2, not 1, but 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. There we go. And chain 2. 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. And chain 2. And we'll do this all the way across until we reach our point, and then I'll show you how to do the point. So let's work across, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, and chain 2, all the way across until we reach the point or the corner of our cowl. I stitched up the side of my cowl, and now I've reached the point, so I'm going to take out that stitch marker so I can stitch in there. And in this chain 2 space in the center of that point we started, we're again going to stitch 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. I'm going to go ahead and chain 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker back in there just in case I get going pretty fast and forget where my corner is. All right, and now we did our chain 2, and we're going to do the same thing up this side of this side of the cowl. So we're going to chain 2 and 2 double crochets in each of the chain 2 spaces. Chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets all the way up the other side of our cowl. And you can again see how the point is really looking nice. And I'm liking this Mandela yarn for this project. There we go. All right, so I'm going to finish up this side, working the 2 double crochets in each chain 2 space and chain 2 till I reach the end of this row. I finished this side of the row, and we're not going to double crochet in those last 5 on this row. We're going to chain 2. We're going to skip those 2 double crochets and then double crochet in the last 3. And this is kind of what you'll see as we continue on with our rows. We'll repeat this row and then we'll repeat this row so that they're off centered from each other. And that's how we can continue to keep the granny square portion to work. So I chained 3 and I'm going to turn. I'm going to place a double crochet in the next double crochet. Then I'll place a double crochet in the next double crochet. And then I'll place those 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. And like I was saying a couple seconds ago, you'll see a little bit of a pattern here because there'll be 3, then 5 because of the 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. Then you'll see 3 double crochets and then 5 because we placed 2 double crochets in that chain 2 space. And that's the way that pattern will look. Gives us a nice edge to work with. So I chain 2, and again I'm going to place 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. And we'll work this the same way we did the previous row, working across those chain 2 spaces with a chain 2 in between until we get to our point, and then we'll stitch 2, 2 and 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the point again. This is when I said this pattern is super duper easy, because once it's set up, you just continue to stitch these rows for as many rows as you want. If you want a thinner cowl, you can make it thinner and not stitch as many rows. If you want a thicker cowl, then you can stitch more rows. It's up to you and what you prefer. These are the kind of patterns that I love because everyone is different and prefers different styles. And this one kind of works for just about anybody. And you could make this in different colors and it would work for a man or a woman. Just tuck it inside your coat to keep your neck warm, or add it with a blouse or dress for just a little extra fun and fanciness. So I'm going to continue working across my row, stitching the chain 2 and the 2 double crochets in the chain 2 spaces until I reach my point again, and then I'll make my point. So just to repeat myself again, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the next chain 2 space across this side of the cowl till I reach that point. So I'm back at the corner. I've stitched across this row. I'm going to take my stitch marker out. And in this corner again, or this point, I'm going to stitch 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Then I'll chain 2, And at this point I probably wouldn't put my stitch marker back in, but just in case, because after this we're going to get going pretty fast like I said, and we don't want to forget where that corner is. So that's totally up to you which thing works best, to use it or not. And then we'll continue on across the row, stitching, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, chain 2, stitching 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. All the way across our row. And it's looking pretty terrific. I'm really loving these colors, like I said, for this cowl. I finished my way back across this side. And of course, I put 2 double crochets in that last chain 2 space. And then we're going to place 1 double crochet in each of the last 3 double crochets. And again, on this end, you'll see that we have 3 double crochets together, 5 here, 3 and 5. And that, like I said, just keeps the pattern going for us. And this is also going to give us a nice edge, because this is the edge to this edge that we're going to be sewing together to form the cowl. Now, at this point in our work, turn this so that you can see how it lays. There we go. There we go. Like I was saying, at this point in our work, you're going to do everything exactly the same for the next few rows. Now, let me grab this other one. We're going to need to continue what we've been doing here for 5 more rows in order for it to be the size that this one is. And this is approximately 7 inches. So you can decide how many rows that you want to make. Now this last row is a trim row that we'll put on after we do as many rows as we want. Now if you want it to just be a nice thin cowl, you could go ahead and put the trim on now. If you want it to be really wide, you could add more rows than what the pattern calls for. But for this one, since this is the one that I'm working on, for me, I'm going to make 5 more rows just like these, doing the point exactly the same. And then after I do that, I'll show you how to add the trim. So just so you understand, you're repeating every other row. And the only thing really different is these ends, the way you start and finish. One row you'll start with the 3 double crochets and a chain 2, and then the next row you'll have the 3 double crochets and then 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, and that will alternate. So go ahead and stitch as many rows as needed for your cowl, and then I'll show you how to add that pretty trim. I finished the amount of rows that I want. This makes for about a 7-inch wide cowl. Now if you want your cowl wider, you can certainly add as many rows, remembering to alternate the rows for as long as you want to. Here's my corner. Looks really pretty. But now it's time to add that trim. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. And what we're going to do is we're going to place a single crochet in the first 3 double crochets. Put your hook through, pull a loop through, yarn over, and go through both loops. All right, so now we have those 3 single crochets, which brings us to our first chain 2 space. In this first chain 2 space, we're going to place 2 double crochets, 1, 2, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to stitch 2 more double crochets. And that's the way our shell stitch will work. Then we'll skip over to the next chain 2 space and stitch 2 single crochets. 1, 2. And we'll repeat this across. So in the next chain 2 space, I'm going to stitch 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets in the same chain 2 space. Now I'll go to the next chain 2 space and I'll stitch 2 single crochets. I found another knot. Boy, this yarn is really knotty today. Alright, so now we'll go to the next chain 2 space and we'll stitch 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Isn't that pretty? And now we'll go to the next chain 2 space and stitch 2 single crochets. Looks like I've got some work to do on that knot, huh? All right, next chain 2 space, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Now we'll repeat this all the way to the corner. We started with those 3 single crochets, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the first chain 2 space, and then in the next chain 2 space we did 2 single crochets, and then we just repeated that. 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. We'll repeat this all the way across until we get to this point, and then I'll show you what to do. So isn't this trim turning out beautiful? Now I've worked my way down here, and you'll notice I've got a chain 2 space here, here's my corner, and here's my chain 2 space. And that should be how it works out at the corner. So what you'll do at the corner here is you'll go ahead and work that shell stitch, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And then when you get to the corner, you'll stitch another shell stitch, which is exactly what we've been doing in the corner anyway. 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And then in the next chain 2 space, you'll work another shell stitch. This way you'll have 3 shell stitches in that corner. And you can see you'll have a shell stitch in this chain 2 space, you'll have a shell stitch in the corner, and then a shell stitch in the next chain 2 space. It makes it look really pretty. And of course, our shell stitch is 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, which is exactly what we've been stitching here, and we just stitch another one there to make the corner lay nicely. And then we'll just go back to what we've been doing. 2 single crochets in the next chain 2 space. There we go. And then the shell stitch of 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets And we'll work our way back up this side of our cowl. We'll continue the repeat of 2 single crochets in the chain 1 space, and then 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the next chain 2 space. And we'll repeat this up the side of our cowl, just like we did on the other side. Once you've worked your way back up the other side of the cowl, and we'll put those 1 single crochet in each of those last 3 stitches, your trim will be done. Now, don't tie off because we're going to place the ends of the cowl together. We've got the 2 ends of the cowl together, and now we're just going to slip stitch across, going through both sides to sew them together. So I'm going to go through that single crochet over here and that first single crochet on this side. I'm going to pull it through, grab that loop, pull it through, and then pull that loop through the loop that's on your hook. That is a slip stitch. And you're going to evenly work across. There we go, add a little string, both sides, so that you're sewing them together. And I do recommend you do this just a little bit loose, so you have a little bit of play in your cowl. Also, you don't want it to pucker up on you. You want it to lay pretty. So we're just slip stitching across, going through both sides, and make sure, I know sometimes you'll have to go through a hole, but you want to try to go through stitches when you can, as the stitches will hold it a little bit better excuse me, than just putting it through the holes. Make sure you're all lined up. We're almost to the end. There we go. Grab those last few stitches. And really make sure you get right up to that end because you don't want there to be a hole or a pucker. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cut my string. I'm going to tie that off. But something that I'm going to do is this string that I started with, because this is where we began our foundation double crochets, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of knots with that string. And I know we shouldn't do knots in crochet, but sometimes I do them just to help it stay a little bit more secure. All right, so there's my 3 knots, and then I'll use my needle and weave that in a little bit. What I want to do here is I want to stretch that out, make sure it's not too puckery, because this is the inside. And now I can flip over my cowl. And it's ready for me to wear just as soon as I weave in that end. I took a moment to weave in the end. And this is how your cowl should look. This is my Loveland triangle cowl.